that fourth quarter, it really was like it was a whole paradigm shift. Like we were playing so well offensively, and then bang, bang, back-to-back drives with turnovers, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like this is really an NFL's film moment. The snow starts pouring down. It starts getting like I felt like my feet started getting heavy because I'm squishing through the snow, and man, it was so good, and it was so great to end up getting that win.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. I'm Jay Croucher. He is Matthew Berry. Connor Rogers has had enough.
Yeah, well, it's a paradigm shift here at the show. We've had a paradigm shift with this show. Connor Rogers has said, you know what, the Jets have quit on the season, so am I.
Yeah.
So anyway, we thank Connor for his contributions to the show. We wish him well. And him and his family well in their future endeavors.
Sure. I don't know about this seating setup. A lot of physical proximity. It's disconcerting. Really.
What's disconcerting about you?
I don't know. You're very close.
You worried I might hug you?
Yeah.
You worried I'd come over? And...
Jay no like?
Yeah.
I don't like leather daddy being so close.
There's no HR on the set here, Jay. Come on, buddy.
Atrocious.
All right, well, Connor will be back on Monday. Maybe. It's a load management day for Connor. It's a rest day for him. You know, much like Jay took a rest day on Wednesday. I'm the only one that works here, is what I've learned here at the happy hour.
Yeah, well, Denny Carter works here too, and he'll be joining us later on, and we will get to everything the mainstream media isn't covering. We'll talk what's on tap, and then we'll close out with our pickup lines. But let's talk first.
If I just do this throughout the show,
I don't like it. I don't love it. It's very, I just don't like it.
You understand? How long have we worked together?
It's very strange.
I'm fine with it. I'm
okay with it.
You're
working out, Matthew?
But I don't think you understand, Jay. I mean, like you and I have worked together almost every day for close to 3 years.
Yeah.
And so
there's been very little touching until this point.
Well, right, of course. But we've occasionally shook hands and fist bumped, but I don't think we've ever had pure physical touch like that.
Over under 2.5 hugs.
Well, I mean, other than our one night in Buffalo.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah. But my question to you, Jay, you're a smart guy, and you analyze trends and stats. So when I touched you the first time, just as like a joke, have you mentioned the proximity, and I touch you like this as a joke. And then your reaction is I really don't like it.
Yes.
What do you think that's
true.
Inspires in me?
I walked into the additional touching. That's
yes!
on my part. Yeah,
I mean, like,
complicit.
If you've learned anything about me,
yes.
the minute you say it makes you uncomfortable, I'm merely going to do it a lot more.
Yeah. No, I should have told you to do it more and do it more aggressively. Yeah. My poor hair. All right. Do you want to talk about Thursday Night Football? Browns fans drink for free, by the way.
You guys are the best. Browns fans, the dog pound. They drink for free because I don't know if you saw that game last night, but it was a disgusting blizzard, and they're out there for a 2-8 team as if it was like the Super Bowl. Like those, and they're shirtless and they're like Browns fans drink for free. They came correct last night. That was like I would not have suffered through that. I'm also a wimp. I probably would have tried to figure out a way to get into a box. To be honest with you, like a suite or something like that, because that's how I'm built.
Yeah.
But the Browns fans are real men. They are real men and women, and they took it to the elements, and they saw their team come out with a victory. It was ugly. Part of the reason I've been touching you so much is I enjoy it, but and I also enjoy making you uncomfortable.
But of touching.
Yeah, really kind of a blizzard there. But the other thing that, Jay, is I didn't want to talk about this game because it was ugly.
It was tough. It was tough, and we'll get into why. But first of all, the hero of the game, one of the good things of the game, was Nick Chubb. And the story of Nick Chubb, the comeback continues. And we heard from Kevin Stefanski talking about Nick Chubb being his favorite player.
I've run out of superlatives for Nick, honestly, and he's my favorite player on the team. You can tell everybody else has said that. I have a favorite kid too. She's not here, but Nick does the right thing all the time, and to see what he's gone through to come back and put himself where he is, just to be back playing in the first place, and then to be back out there and performing like he's performing, scoring for this football team when we need him the most. He's a special player, but he's a great person.
Nick Chubb, as you can see, not the most efficient game from Chubb, just 20 carries for 59 yards, but he does score the 2 touchdowns, including the game winner at the end. And I think the most important thing, Matthew, played 64% of the snaps.
Yeah, I think he ran more than we expected him to because honestly, they were moving the ball. Like they were in this game competitively, obviously throughout the game. They ended up winning, and they were moving the ball. Like it's weird to say that they were moving the ball and running effectively, but it did feel like they did. Even though the fact, as you see the numbers there, 20 rush attempts, 59 yards. He averages 3 yards a carry. Yeah. I mean, he basically was just sort of falling forward. It's a tough matchup against, but he does get into the end zone twice. Ends up with 19 fantasy points. It's his best fantasy game this season. He's been under 11 fantasy points in each of the previous 4 games. So it's kind of, ironic, typical of this season, right? That he, his best fantasy game of the year is against the Steelers.
Indeed. Yeah.
I still feel like going forward, I don't know that there's much that changes here. He's a touchdown-dependent RB2.
Yep.
He's a volume-based and touchdown-dependent RB2 going forward, is my take.
I think the thing is, the Browns, I think their backfield's pretty easy to understand now. If they're playing with a lead or in a close game, it's going to be Chubb with 2/3 of the carries or so like he got last night. And if they're down, which they're probably going to be down more often than not because they have a really tough schedule the rest of the way, it's probably going to be the Jerome Ford show, and he played 2/3 of the snaps last week against the Saints. So Jerome Ford, because they were in relatively favorable game script, he just didn't do much. 4 carries for 19 yards, just has the 1 catch for 8 yards, so he doesn't cash out over on the receiving. So I think Jerome Ford is just really a fantasy non-entity for the time being.
And he caught that reception for 8 yards on the first drive, and the line was 11.5. I'm like, we're in great shape. That was your bet as well. We'll get to mine, which also didn't cash. But the other thing about Chubb, to your point about the schedule, at Denver next week, then at Pittsburgh, home to Kansas City, at Cincinnati. So it's certainly tough. If there's one positive here, none of those offenses except for maybe Cincinnati are explosive. I get it. Bo Nix and the Broncos were awesome against the Falcons last week, but I don't know that they go into Denver and they get blown out by their defense is good enough that's going to keep them in games, and so that's what you're sort of hoping for here at Denver, at Pittsburgh, home to Kansas City, the next 3 coming up for Nick Chubb. Again, it's got to be volume-based and touchdown-based because he has 1 game this year, only 1 game this year that he's run for above 3.3 yards per carry. He looked better last night, Jay, but he still doesn't look like Nick Chubb to me.
He doesn't look like the old Nick Chubb, which makes a lot of sense given how catastrophic that injury was and the fact that this offensive line is healthier, but it's also older and just hasn't been clicking at the highest level. One good thing with Nick Chubb is that, like, if you do have Nick Chubb on your team and you wanted to put the second Baltimore game anywhere on the schedule, you'd want to put it in Week 18 when it doesn't matter for fantasy purposes because they have such a good run defense. But I think Chubb, to your point, RB2, touchdown dependence.
Yeah, no passing game usage, just 1 reception for 1 yard on 1 target in this one as well. Last question for you on this particular subject. Kevin Stefanski, you heard him, Browns head coach, talking about Chubb's his favorite player.
Sure.
Which is weird because I thought it might have been Deshaun Watson, but you figure Watson's probably second on the list,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
I'm sure Stefanski has Watson second.
-110 each side type of operation.
Yeah. But he also mentions that he has a favorite kid, his daughter. Kevin Stefanski has 3 children.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah.
You have 3 children. Do you have a favorite?
Yeah, it's baby Rio, the 2-year-old. But I like to be very upfront. I let the other 2 know that they're playing for second place.
Right.
And
you're
one
like
day
Deion
maybe.
Sanders. Deion Sanders ranks his kids every week. He has 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have a favorite twin daughter?
I have a favorite. I have 5 kids, and I have a favorite, 1,000%. It changes every day.
Sure. Okay,
Beth and I always like to say,
political.
Beth and I always make the joke, when we'll meet other couples or we'll be at parties or whatever, it'll come up and say, yeah, we have 5 kids. And they're always like, whoa, you have 5? And I'm always like, that's the right reaction. We have 5 kids, 3 too many. It depends on the day which 3. It always changes which 3 we wish we could get rid of.
Yes.
So, but yes. We have 5. Beth and I play zone defense quite a bit.
Sure.
We went from man-to-man to zone defense.
Well, we play zone defense as well because there's 3 of them and 2 of us. But we can kind of contain. Because, it's
well, they're
3
small.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they need you for stuff.
5 is more than 3 as well. There's lots of more breakdowns in coverage when there's 5.
Well, and what's happened with my daughters, so we have 5 children, but 26, 24, 20, and then the twin girls are 13. And the 26 and 24-year-old have very serious girlfriends that have been around for like over 3 years each of them. So they're basically parts of the they're part of the family at this point, right? And so what happens is that, like, you think we have a little bit of control over at least our 13-year-olds because, well, we're not taking you to the mall. We're not taking you there. No, not until you clean your room, not until but what they'll do is they'll just text, like, my son's girlfriends.
Yeah.
And we'll be like, what do you mean you're going to the mall? Jane's taking me. Yeah, and like, where's Samantha?
Yeah.
Jane took her to the movies. What? They're at Starbucks with Charlotte, and so anyway, it's a disaster, honestly. It's a zone defense, but it's a loose one, to be clear.
It is funny how my oldest is 6. When you're a parent, you really just become a glorified Uber driver.
Yes, and ATM.
Yes, without getting paid for it, obviously. There's no Uber, there's no tip, there's no star system or anything. No. It's just you're just driving around people.
That's right. I'm an Uber driver and ATM.
Yes.
That is what I am for my parents.
Exactly.
For my kids, I should say.
Okay, well, you mentioned breakdowns in coverage. A guy benefiting from them last night was Jeudy, and we heard from Jameis on how much he loves throwing to Jeudy.
The attributes of a number one receiver is get open, be able to make plays after the catch. Look at Jeudy. If you look at Jeudy and you see the things that he does, he gets open, he runs after the catch, and he fights for the football. Man, I got a lot of guys that I can trust. But, man, when you have someone that is very talented and that has a knack for getting open, has a knack when the moment matters most, he makes the play. I'm grateful to be throwing the ball to Jeudy.
By the way, he brings up a very good point. Jameis Winston's just a walking quote machine.
I just can't with Jameis. The way he speaks, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, don't say anything too bad because, cut to 3 years from now, like our new NBC colleague,
sure.
Jameson's going straight to the media.
Yeah.
I don't know where, but when he
question.
retires, he is going straight to the media somewhere. He is a walking quote machine. But one thing he said there, I think, is important. He says, he literally started that quote by saying the number one job of wide receivers is to get open, and you're sort of like, well, duh. But I actually, targets are earned, right? That's the point. There's a connection there with Jeudy and Winston. He is earning targets from Jameis Winston since he became the starter. Since Jameis became the starter, Jeudy is 4th in the NFL in receiving yards per game. He's averaging 17 fantasy points in Winston's 4 starts. He's had at least 12 fantasy points in every single game that Winston has been under center. He gets 6 targets in this game, in a game in which the Browns, who previously had been throwing it over 40 times a game, they only attempt 27 pass attempts, partially because they didn't have the ball that much, partially because of just brutal weather conditions there as well. But Jeudy is clearly the number one passing option on the Browns as long as Winston's under center, and I think he's on that wide receiver 2-3 range right now for me.
Well, the thing with Jeudy, who has had such a strange career and so many ups and downs, and he's just completely written off not that long ago. Now he's the wide receiver 1 in an offense that has a competent quarterback who can move the ball around. And the other thing too is that Kevin Stefanski won Coach of the Year last year. He won He won it 4 or 5 years ago as well. He's a 2-time winner. He's one of the best offensive minds and kind of schemers in the game. And so the fact that Jeudy has this around him now, and also I think the thing is too is that they're going to have to throw more often than they did last night typically. So I think Jeudy, very viable to your point, kind of wide receiver.
And by the way, and they have Nick Chubb back, which even though Nick Chubb hasn't been super efficient, he gives them a threat that they didn't have with Jerome Ford as their lead and Deontay Foreman and some of these guys. So it's a more complete offense. And there's a little bit of, I think it's partially Jameis. It's partially the fact they're 3-8 on the season. It's partially because Kevin Stefanski's like, look, I'm finally free of this, other quarterback that the ownership saddled me with. So there's kind of like an effort attitude with this offense. Just, screw it. We're going for it.
They are the most compelling, soundbitey 3-8 team in NFL history because between Jameis, which is just Jameis is just to your point a walking highlight reel of quotes. The Nick Chubb story, Myles Garrett giving out quotes last night as well, saying I'm Edge 1, I'm Defensive Player of the Year. Wait your turn. TJ Watt, he's on fire. Stefanski's a great personality. There's just a lot. David Njoku, Leather Daddy. It's all happening for the Browns.
With Deshaun Watson off the team, they're an easy team to root for.
Yeah, no, for sure.
No, I mean, seriously, like if you don't like the Browns, it's because you don't like Deshaun Watson, which I get, believe me. But with Deshaun Watson out of the picture, they're an easy team to root for in terms of a lot of these guys as well. I love me some Club said. Tough game for Cedric Tillman, 2 for 28. He leaves the game with a concussion, so we'll check that. It is 10 days until they play the Broncos, so hopefully he can get better soon as well. Elijah Moore gets 5 targets in this one, 3 for 21. But suddenly there's a viable passing game in Cleveland. Again, the volume was down last night, but and tough game for David Njoku. So incredibly frustrating for David Njoku. Someone who has David Njoku, who's playing big show in the League of Assholes with David Njoku, and he drops a touchdown. He literally just drops a touchdown. Blake Whiteheart and Jordan Akins both get 2 big catches, which should have gone to David Njoku. He did catch the 2-point conversion, to sort of salvage his day a little bit, but tough day at the office for him. Last one I want to ask you about here, Jay, is Jameis Winston, who, 18 to 27, 219 yards, runs 7 yards, including the touchdown run, finishes with 13.5 fantasy points, which isn't amazing, but against the Steelers in blizzard-like conditions on a short week, not bad.
No, not bad, and the rushing touchdown saves so much. And I think with Jameis, for the most part, what you're relying on him to unlock the full Jameis experience, the team needs to be losing, because then he goes and he does his 45 attempts that he does so frequently and is able to sustain that volume. So I think Jameis, for the most part, to me, the typical Jameis line is going to be like 280 passing yards on 39 attempts, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, fantasy voluminous, not particularly NFL effective, but competent enough. And I think that going forward, they're going to be in more throw scripts than they were last night.
Since taking over as a starter in Week 8, he's the 14th best quarterback in fantasy football on a points-per-game basis, and that's about right to me. Like, he's a mid-tier QB2 who in the right matchup or in a bye week can be used, again, at Denver, at Pittsburgh, home to Kansas City. It's not until at Cincinnati where you feel like you might feel good about it. Again, as you look at the upcoming schedule here, Week 16, though, at the Bengals on Sunday Night Football. Week 17, home to the Dolphins. So he could be very viable during the fantasy playoffs. Don't mind him as a stash in slightly deeper leagues.
Yeah, even the Chiefs matchup, which would have looked scary a couple of months ago, their pass defense isn't what it was, being banged up and being thrown on a lot more, and they have an excellent run defense, so a bit of a pass funnel there. Other side of the ball, Matthew, I thought the most notable thing was the continued evolution of this Steelers backfield, Jaylen Warren getting more usage than he had previously.
I thought, we'll talk about the stats in a second, I thought just to the eye test, I thought he looked like the better running back.
Yeah.
And listen, you are very pro Najee.
My previously good name to Najee.
You did. And I have not been a fan, but I've admitted, Najee Harris has looked good this year.
Yeah.
He has absolutely looked good this year, but honestly, I thought Jaylen Warren just looked like the better, more explosive running back last night, which is what we saw most of last year as well. They were just stubborn with Najee Harris. We were like, free Jaylen Warren. 57% of the snaps, got a 19% target share. It's his 3rd straight game, Jaylen Warren, with at least 13 touches and at least 60 yards from scrimmage. We keep saying it week after week. Like, why is Jaylen Warren not rostered in more leagues? Najee Harris has his worst fantasy game of the year. It ends his streak. He had a streak coming into this game of 5 straight games with double-digit fantasy points. He doesn't get there, just 7.4 in this one as well. Played his season low in snaps. For the first time since week 4, he did not have a goal-to-go rushing attempt. Over his last 3 games, he's averaging under 3 yards per carry. So whether it's the offensive line, whether Harris is wearing down here in the middle of the season, on the road against Cleveland on a short week as well. Short weeks are always tougher on running backs, and so maybe Warren, who missed a couple of games early in the season, he might have been fresher in this game, especially on a short week, so bounced back a little bit. So I don't want to read too much into it, but nice day at the office for Jaylen Warren. They now have 10 days before they play the Bengals, who will be off the bye. Jaylen Warren, again, just needs to be rostered in more leagues. Like, I don't think he's completely taken over this backfield. It's still going to be a split, and game script will have a little bit of it independent. Again, randomly the Steelers were chasing a lot of the game last night.
I mean, the Steelers, the thing with them is that they have a brutal remaining schedule. They've still got another game against Baltimore. They've got to play the Chiefs. As we take a look at that schedule, none of these games are easy. At the Bengals, there'll be dogs there. Home Browns, we just saw, obviously, that matchup. At Eagles as well.
Week 15.
I think they're going to be in situations where they do need to throw the ball, and largely because of the schedule, because of the snap rate last night, and just because Jaylen Warren looks like the better running back, I think I'd rather just have Jaylen Warren on my team than Najee Harris the rest of the way.
Yeah, exactly. Especially, again, look at the fantasy playoffs, right? Weeks 15 through 17. At Eagles, at Ravens, home to the Chiefs. That's the Christmas Day game. So I guess the Ravens are the way you can move the ball against Baltimore is through pass catching running backs. And so again, you figure you're down to the Chiefs as well. The Eagles have been so tough. That's a brutal schedule in the fantasy playoffs. So for leagues that still have their trade deadline open, it's different whether a league. I wouldn't mind trying to once this week ends, because obviously the Steelers just played, their players are locked. I wouldn't mind trying to see if I could sell some of these guys.
Indeed. All right, pass game for the Steelers. Russell Wilson completes 21 of 28 attempts for 270 yards and a touchdown. But I think the big story was the introduction more of Justin Fields. Through the week, Arthur Smith talked about how the Steelers wanted to use Fields more. This is from Brian Batko covering the Steelers. Arthur Smith thinks that Justin Fields' wrinkle can and did help the Steelers offense, but he still views him as a premium starter in the NFL, not just a gadget guy. We have 2 starting quarterbacks. It's a very unique situation. Now, this was from Tuesday before the game, but you know what they say, Matthew? If you have 2 starting quarterbacks, you have no starting quarterbacks.
That's 100% right. I know what fantasy managers out there are thinking. Oh, we finally got Arthur Smith out of Atlanta. He can no longer mess with Bijan and Tyler Algier, you know. He's going to go to Pittsburgh, where we already knew it was going to be a committee between Warren and Harris. So we're finally out of the mess that is Arthur Smith. Oh, no. He's going to play Justin Fields just enough to hurt Russell Wilson's fantasy value, to hurt the Steelers' chances at winning. What was that pass on third down, Jay? Explain that to me.
I don't know what's going on.
Why are you bringing in a guy who, when you say ice cold, like, again, hasn't warmed up, isn't in the flow of the game, and it's literally ice cold out there?
Yeah, I don't know what they were doing overall in that game, and I know Mike Tomlin's one of the great NFL coaches.
No doubt.
The way that he manages some of these endgame situations, don't understand what they're doing, calling timeouts, not calling timeouts at the end as well. So it was all a bit of a mess. And I think Russell Wilson, like statistically, like 21 for 28, 270 and a touchdown, that's fine. But if Fields is going to cut in, particularly on these like really kind of just huge plays for the context of the game. Wouldn't be surprised if Fields is getting in there in red zone packages as well going forward. So that it really dampens Russell Wilson's ceiling.
He's been under 14 fantasy points now in 3 of his past 4 games. He's had under 30 pass attempts in 4 of his 5 starts this season. The volume doesn't bother me because Russell Wilson at his best has always just been highly efficient.
Yeah.
All those years in Seattle where he was great, like he was never like a massive voluminous passer. It was always just like he was super efficient. You know what I mean? And like he'd do these moon balls, and DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett or whoever would come down with him, and so it's been sort of working here with the Steelers in terms of especially George Pickens. Calvin Austin catches one last night against the Commanders. It was Mike Williams, who, by the way, didn't show up in the box score, but Mike Williams was out there for 28% of the snaps. Of course, does nothing against the Browns. Catches the touchdown against my Commanders, causes us to lose. Thanks.
Yeah. Well,
great. But
well, speaking of those moon balls, Russell Wilson, he threw one in the end zone for the Hail Mary, and your man George Pickens, he didn't catch it because he was busy playing Tekken Tag tournament at the back of the end zone.
I don't know if you've seen this video online, but it's unbelievable. Like he's literally in the back of, like there's a Hail Mary. Like it's like you know, Tyreek Stevenson's like, am I off the hook now? Look, it's not just me. George Pickens is out of the end zone and like tackling a guy.
He just doesn't care.
George Pickens, like. Brilliant plays, and then you're like, what the hell are you doing, dude? Like, it's like there's no in between with George Pickens.
No, there's not. Goes 4 or 7, 48 yards, just basically does nothing.
Yeah, and by the way, should have cashed his receiving prop as well. It was, I believe it was 58.5. I took the over. Didn't happen. He had like a, show the play. Steven says he's got the play. Show me the play here, producer Steven. Here it is. 3rd and 1. 4 seconds left. Hail Mary from Russell Wilson. Look in the very back of the end zone. Look at, like, can you see that? Look at this.
He's grabbing Newsome by the head.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if you see that on the right side of your screen. Yeah, there you go. And then, people are just keeping Pickens away, and security's coming there, and helmets off, and it's all sorts of chaos.
Would have been the most George Pickens thing in history had someone else, not George Pickens, caught that Hail Mary to win the Steelers the game, and then it's called back because of a face mask, because George Pickens is just annihilating a dude in the back of the end zone.
That would have been the most George Pickens play ever. I agree with you. He had a couple of end zone targets that, like, he was open, and Russ just missed him, and I don't know if that's the wind.
Yeah.
They didn't connect. So there are a couple of different times that, like, you just figure that, again, given how good he's been, when George Pickens, 7 targets, you figure he can get to 58.5 yards. But he did not. He finishes 4 for 48. So the under cashes there. My bet from last night did not cash. I was very bitter because he had like over 30 yards. I think like after the first quarter. I'm like, we got this.
Yeah.
We're on pace. We're on pace for another 70 to 85 yard game.
Yep. Tough Tough Thursday night for the fellas. Our bets buried in the snow. We've been
Thanks for
pretty
using the
hot
word
until
buried.
that point, but you don't win them all. All right, let's get to
That's why they call it betting.
Indeed. Let's get to Week 12 injuries that we're tracking.
By the way, Connor Rogers not showing up, but also his David and Njoku bet of over on the receptions did not cash. We were 0 for 3 last night. I think that might literally be the first 0 for 3 game we've had all year long.
It's been a long time.
Yeah. We've been pretty hot. Is it Jonathan? Who's the kid that's keeping track for us? I think it's Jonathan.
Yeah.
I think it's Jonathan. Anyway, Jonathan will let us know if we've had an 0 for 3 game before.
Indeed. All right, Week 12 injuries that we're tracking. The big one, Brock Purdy dealing with a shoulder. We'll talk about that momentarily. Josh Jacobs with his quad. Isaiah Pacheco looks like he might be on the way back from that ankle. DeAndre Swift dealing with the groin. The Raiders running backs, Madison and White, both banged up. CeeDee Lamb in some doubt with his back. Lad McConkey dealing with a shoulder. DeVonta Smith and George Kittle, big names dealing with hamstrings. But I think the big one, Matthew.
I mean, and McConkey, by the way, McConkey's the Monday night game, so we're still a day ahead or a day behind, if you will, for that. That'll later today and Saturday will be more telling for McConkey. DeVonta Smith, who coming off the bad game, that's a tough one as well, and that's the Sunday night game for us here on NBC and Peacock.
The big one, though, is Brock Purdy, and Kyle Shanahan was non-committal on Purdy's status for Week 12 from at our SF49ers. Kyle Shanahan on Brock Purdy via KNBR. He was still limited today. He didn't do as much yesterday, but did a little bit more today. He went out there and did a little bit, then went back in about halfway through and rested up. Hopefully it will be feeling great on Sunday. Now the line has moved. The Packers now 3-point favorites, even pushing towards 3.5 after that opened at Packers -1. So that doesn't, what that means.
And the over-under, by the way, dropped from 47.5 to 46.5.
Yes, indeed. And there's no weather at play in that game, so it's purely about Purdy. Now, that is basically a placeholder spread. The line is not going to end at 3. If Purdy plays, it's going to go back towards 1.5. If he doesn't, I think it could inch towards closer to a touchdown with the backup situation for the Niners. So I think that is just kind of speaks to the uncertainty around Purdy. 1, if he's going to play. 2, if he's going to be limited if he does. How confident are you in the Niners situation overall if Purdy can't go?
Yeah, I mean, don't feel great. So their backups are, and I had to look this up. It's Brandon Allen and Dobby, our guy Josh Dobbs.
Why isn't he the backup?
That is a great question.
Why the NFL doesn't love Josh
The
Dobbs.
only thing I can think of is that Brandon Allen, more of a pure pocket passer, probably closer to what Brock Purdy brings to the offense than Dobbs, who's more of a move quarterback, a guy that you want to get out of the pocket and use his legs. So that may be the reason why you might see both guys on Sunday against the Packers if Brock Purdy can't go. I'd be nervous about it. It's a 4 o'clock game, so hopefully we have some clarity. The other thing is by the way, F Kyle Shanahan. Seriously, just in terms of the injury, after the Christian McCaffrey stuff and just some of the other injury stuff that's come about through,
Debo, Kittle, Bosa.
All of it, just the 49ers have been very, very loosey-goosey with how they've talked about injuries throughout this year, right? And the biggest, most glaring one obviously is Christian McCaffrey, where he was supposed to be ready for Week 1, then he was supposed to be ready for Week 2, then he was going on IR, but he was going to be back right after IR, and then he didn't show up till Week 10. They just, lying is a strong word. It didn't seem like they were 100% honest or forthcoming.
Deliberately obfuscating the truth.
Deliberately obfuscating the truth. That's a nice big word. Good job.
Thank you, Matthew.
Well
done.
So
well done. CeeDee Lamb was the other guy, the other big one at the moment. So he didn't practice on Thursday. And as much as you've been complaining.
But anyway, here's my question. Let's answer the question, though.
Okay.
In terms of, I am nervous just because it's a 4 o'clock game. I'm also nervous that even if he goes to, quote, gut it out, it's the shoulder. And so is he as effective? And could he leave this game early as well? There's one league where I have Brock Purdy. I'm starting Tua instead of him.
Yep.
Just because I feel safer there. It depends on what else you have. I think that you probably you're still starting McCaffrey, and I think you're still starting Kittle. Where it becomes a conversation, I think, is Debo and Juwan Jennings if Brock Purdy isn't playing.
Yep, I think that makes sense. And I think that there are a lot of guys in that same realm as Tua who you probably have to start over Purdy. Guys like Geno Smith or maybe Matthew Stafford, like guys that you're just confident are going to be out there and playing.
Yeah, you'd feel better about Jordan Love. You know what I mean? You don't love the idea of Sam Darnold on the road at Chicago, but maybe you roll Sam Darnold instead of a potentially, beaten up Brock Purdy. But again, if we don't know prior to 4 o'clock, and we'll dive into this in a bigger way on Fantasy Football pregame, Sunday morning, 11 to 1 Eastern on Peacock and the NFL and NBC YouTube channel on the Company Man. We'll dive into more of that. But if we don't know before 4 o'clock, you just have to make sure you have a quarterback pivot if you decide to roll with Purdy, and he does, in fact, get ruled out. I would lower expectations for Debo and Juwan Jennings if Purdy can't go.
Yep.
It's 6 teams on a bye, though, so you may not have a better option.
Indeed. And you may not have a better option than CeeDee Lamb, but you might have to find one as he did not practice on Thursday, dealing with a back and foot issue. Now, you've done a lot of complaining about the Commanders lately, Matthew, but the great blessing of the Commanders season is that you haven't had to play the Dallas Cowboys yet, and now you get 2 games coming up against the zombie Cowboys, who are not... Their season is done, essentially, and it looks like CeeDee Lamb, he may not be part of the action. On Sunday, Brandon Cooks was limited in Thursday's practice. So what are we doing with the Cowboys' receiving situation if CeeDee is done?
Hopefully ignoring it. I mean, I don't know that you want Jalen. I think I'd be surprised if Brandon Cooks is active for this game, right? And we're not expecting Ferguson either. So, I mean, it might be Jalen Tolbert and Luke Schoonemaker. For the Cowboys with Cooper Rush under center, and we might see Trey Lance this week as well. So it just feels like just a situation to avoid offensively. I could see you using Rico Dowdle as a flex play this week and maybe some dump offs there. Commanders have struggled against the run a little bit, but dicey. None of it inspires confidence. Obviously, if CeeDee Lamb can go, you're starting him just because the overall talent and the volume he'll get in the passing game, but it doesn't feel like there's no if CeeDee Lamb's out, then you feel great about Jalen Tolbert. Because again, you've got a backup quarterback on the road who's so far, hasn't looked as good as he did previously when he's filled in for Dak Prescott in terms of Cooper Rush.
Yep. In that same division, DeVonta Smith with the hamstrings, you mentioned he didn't practice on Thursday. I'm not sure there's really an action here outside. It's just going to mean more work for A.J. Brown, for Dallas Goedert. I can't imagine Jahan Dotson is super appealing.
No, or, none of those guys. Johnny Wilson. It's going to be Goddard and A.J. Brown. I think you'll see Saquon out of the backfield. I can't imagine it expands anymore. But A.J. Brown already made the love list. And so, I mean, if DeVonta Smith is out, going against this Rams secondary, which is a bottom 12 pass defense over the last 4 weeks, A.J. Brown could wind up as the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy this week. He's that good, the matchup's that good, and the volume should be there, especially if DeVonta Smith is either out or missing in action. You'll see some Goddard. Goddard becomes interesting just because if you look at his numbers in games in which either A.J. Brown or DeVonta Smith have missed, they're pretty good. He'll become the number 2 option on a good offense.
Yep. If you are cruelled by any of these injuries, you'll need to make some waiver adds. The top adds that we have here, Drake Maye, QB 16 for Matthew, continuing to use his legs, getting more proficient through the air. Tommy Cutlets, favorable matchup against Tampa Bay. Amir Abdullah and Dylan Lobby, the Raiders running backs, just because of the injury situations with Madison and Zamir White. Roschon Johnson, no longer on my fantasy team. He becomes viable if DeAndre Swift is going to miss. Quentin Johnston, touchdown dependent, but tends to score a lot of touchdowns and has a favorable matchup against Baltimore. Pop Douglas emerging as perhaps wide receiver 1 for Drake Maye. Xavier Legette is wide receiver 1 for Bryce Young. Hunter Henry, who we talk about ad nauseum, tight end 6. And then Will Dissly, tight end 10 with a favorable matchup against Baltimore. Any of those guys most appealing to you, Matthew?
I mean, I think they're all interesting. It certainly depends on what you need there. I mean, again, Maye, and we'll talk about Maye in a little bit, but Maye and DeVito, again, if you're in a deeper league and you need a quarterback, we think they're both, QB2 viable this week if you're trying to fill in for Purdy or, Josh Allen or whoever, some of the other guys that are on, Cousins that are out this week. Roschon Johnson played 44% of the snaps last week. He got 11 touches. He got 2 of the 3 goal line carries as well. So I think he's interesting because in addition to the work and, Spymageddon and everything like that, you're always looking for variance, as you talk about, Jay. And the fact that, he had the season high in snap rate in the first game that Thomas Brown was calling the plays for the Bears, Shane Waldron no longer there, that sort of, that's interesting. Then you add to the fact DeAndre Swift is dealing with that groin injury, and suddenly Roschon Johnson becomes pretty interesting, especially this week in a home matchup against the Vikings. It's a tough matchup. Vikings' #1 run defense over the last month, but still, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed king is mean. It's 6 teams on a bye, and
That's not it. That's not it. What'd you say?
I said in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king.
No, you said the one-eyed king is mean.
Is that what I said?
I think that's what you said.
I don't know. I'm being this close to you, Jay. I'm mesmerized by your beauty.
Say this with the Denny sizzle.
You're so handsome, and I'm distracted.
All right.
I'm distracted by your sinewy arms.
It's Denny time.
Is it?
Here at Galaxy Brains, we are handing it all the way to Rodgers for leaving no stone unturned in the search to find the guy who did this, right? Who ruined this season. And, and he's not stopping. We saw it this week. He's not stopping. First, he turned over the Robert Saleh stone, and he got him out of the franchise, got him out of the organization, right? So what's next? Oh, well, we're going to trade Mike Williams to a rival within the AFC because it might be him. And this week, he turned over the stone, and he threw Joe Douglas out. All right? He's just going to keep going. More people out the door to find out who did this to this Jets season.
Okay, Denny Carter, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, Denny, that we can't touch you through the Zoom link, as it's been a very touchy show. Also, I don't know if you heard the bad news, but the one-eyed king is mean, which doesn't bode well.
I did hear that.
Doesn't bode well for the
Is
kingdom.
that what I said?
Yeah.
Did I really say that?
Yeah, you did.
It's the end of a long week.
Yeah.
It's the end of a long season, and David and Njoku effed me up the chuckle hole last night. So,
as he is prone to do.
Yeah.
All right, Denny, the mainstream media is hiding Drake Maye from us. What can you tell us about the young Patriots signal caller?
They absolutely are. Look, Drake Maye has volume on his side. This is something that the mainstream press would not tell you when he first got the job from Jacoby Brissett. But since week 9, only Patrick Mahomes, only Joe Burrow, and Caleb Williams have more dropbacks than Drake Maye. He has 15 rushing attempts over his past 3 games. It's not a ton, but it's something. Rushing for quarterbacks being kind of a cheat code in fantasy football. And he should have plenty of time to operate in the pocket this week against the Dolphins. The Dolphins have a pressure rate in the bottom 4 in the league, very near the bottom. So I think he's in a quietly good spot, and the Dolphins are big favorites. So let's get more dropbacks going for Drake Maye this week. I think he profiles as a pretty good streaming option if you are in a tough spot.
Yeah, for sure. I've scoured the internet. I go to a bunch, I watched CNN for literally 2 straight days, and they didn't mention once that in the 6 starts that Drake Maye has made, he's averaging 41 rushing yards per game. They haven't mentioned the fact that out of the 5 completed games that Drake May's played this year, he's had at least 18 fantasy points in 3 of them. And over the last 4 weeks, no one mentions this, that the Dolphins are 27th in pass defense over the last 4 weeks. So it's a really favorable matchup. You mentioned he should have a clean pocket here. And he uses his legs, Jay.
Is he going to be a top 8 quarterback drafted next season because of the value with his rushing?
I think
if they get another weapon.
If they get another weapon, I mean that's the thing I just think, and it's still New England. It's still probably going to be a fairly balanced and conservative offense. So I don't think he's going to go top 8. There's so many good quarterbacks there, but top 15 for sure. I mean I definitely think. I haven't even thought about my ranks for next year, but feels like top 15 versus top 8, Denny. I don't know where you think Drake Maye might land next year.
Let's get crazy. Let's go with top 8. And you're right, Matthew. CNN never talks about Drake Maye. It's a dereliction of duty, if you ask me.
It really is. Thank you. Thankfully, Denny Carter is on the dark web, searching in the unknown chat rooms. Really unearthing everything like that. He's our own. He's our own kind of spy, if you will, our detective, if you will, fantasy detective.
Yeah, we were looking for a better example than spy. I think you couldn't find it. Denny Carter,
at the end of a
to
long
me,
week.
he's the Woodward and Bernstein of PPR.
That's what they call me.
Uncovering stories. Can you uncover a story for us about?
All the kids love Woodward and Bernstein as well. Is there, the mainstream media? Denny keeps talking about Caleb Williams. The mainstream media won't shut up about Caleb Williams, but feels like that's not where the focus should be, is it, Denny?
No, and this new offensive look for the Bears last week after they parted ways with offensive coordinator Shane Waldron, I think it's good. It's good for DJ Moore, which of course you won't hear in the New York Times. But it's also good for another rookie in Rome Odunze, who's available in 33% of leagues, surprisingly. And I think people mostly would see him as a bench guy this week, right? And what I'm telling you is this, and you won't find this on the mainstream internet or anything. What I'm telling you is you got to play him. In 12-team leagues, you got to get Rome Odunze into your lineup because he is an air yards king right now. We love our air yards. You can't feed them to your kids. Of course, we talked about this on the show. But they do mean something in fantasy. Last week, he had 108 air yards against Green Bay, the 12th most among receivers on the week. Rome Odunze now has the 9th most air yards since week 9 and the 13th most targets since over that span. So, folks, I'm telling you, Rome Odunze is going to hit a big one this week. You need to get him into your lineup in 12-team leagues. 10-team, yeah, maybe leave him on your bench, or leave him on the waiver wire. But he should be rostered, I think, in every league.
Okay, another rookie that's gobbling up targets, Denny, is Jatavian Sanders. What can you tell us about Jatavian?
Because no one else will tell us anything. Yeah.
Right. And where is the coverage of this guy from week 9 to 10 over a long 2-week stretch, a huge sample size? He caught 6 of 7 targets for 95 yards and a touchdown. I haven't heard that anywhere. I had to go deep on the web to find that stat. Also, this one. Of course, he's playing the Chiefs this week, and Kansas City is allowing the 2nd most tight end receptions and the most tight end receiving yards on the season. Kansas City, and this is a super dark one. In fact, I'm actually afraid to read this one on air, but I'm going to do it because the people need to know. Kansas City is allowing the 3rd highest completion rate on targets between 1 and 10 yards. That's where Jatavian Sanders is targeted. It's going to be a big week for him.
Okay, Denny. Well, thank you for shining a light on what the mainstream media won't tell us. Denny's going to stick around after the break. We hit what's on tap. But for now, Notre Dame continues to march towards the college football
From an undisclosed bunker,
playoff.
Denny Carter.
Yes, and this Saturday night they take on Army at Yankee Stadium. Where Denny Carter might be right now, we don't know. NBC and Peacock will lead you up to kickoff, starting at 7 p.m. Eastern. We are back after this, previewing some of the biggest games of the weekend.
Like prime time. Always thought that. It's like tonight's going to be a good night. Has that Black Eyed Peas kind of feel. That's always the kind of feel like we're going. Got my friends are with me, and we're going to go out. Let's make it a great night. Okay. Who isn't, right?
What's on tap? Brought to you by Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the NFL. So we take a look at the matchups with the highest point totals this week. Sundays are easy to enjoy when they are full of football and the fridge is filled with beer. These are the games we're locking in on. We're going to start with Ravens Chargers. Ravens 2.5-point favorites in Los Angeles. The total is a meaty 51 at the moment. Fantasy superstars galore in this one. Obviously, you're starting Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, Derrick Henry. But, Denny, what is your confidence level in Mr. Zay Flowers after a couple quiet back-to-back games?
It's maybe too high, but I will say that the Chargers play 2 deep safeties coverage at the 2nd highest rate in the NFL, only behind the Vikings. So I think we could see a lot of underneath targets, a lot of short area targets for Zay Flowers here from Lamar Jackson. They've done it before against defenses that play a lot of 2 high safeties. So he could be kind of like a PPR cheat code. Hopefully he can make something out of those short area targets. But either way, I feel pretty good about him as a wide receiver too.
Yeah, I get the question, right? So, back-to-back games with under 40 receiving yards, 4 different games this year with under 8 fantasy points. So when he kills you, he kills you. But yeah. I agree with you, Denny, especially given the fact we got 6 teams out of bye, 2 teams already. So with the Thursday night games out, he comes in at wide receiver 19 for me. In one-score games this year, and we expect this game obviously to be close on Monday night between the Ravens and the Chargers. In one-score games this year, he's got a 28% target share. And he's averaging over 14 fantasy points per game. He's had at least 1 end zone target in 3 of the past 4 games as well. So Flowers, I think, to Denny's point, I think in terms of the matchup as well, going against the Chargers, he's still the number 1 option on this passing offense. And it's Monday night. I'm sorry, it's Monday night. I think Lamar Jackson's going to have a big game, and so Zay Flowers is going to be a part of that. Hammett wide receiver, actually 16. Actually, it's 16 now that with the Thursday night guys moved out.
Okay, let's jump to Lions. Colts. Lions are 7.5-point favorites in this one. The total is 50.5. This is a massive line that just speaks to the fact that the betting market is treating the Lions as the best team in football. They are the Super Bowl favorites for the first time in NFL history. The Detroit Lions are Super Bowl favorites.
One pride, fur up.
Indeed. And I think a lot of the questions in this game come down, though, to the Colts wide receivers. And we heard Josh Downs about bullying the bully.
Anthony noted the physicality of Detroit. How much do you need to maybe match that physicality that they bring defensively within this offense? You guys have proven your ability to do that.
Yeah, they play physical in the run game and in the pass game. They press a lot, play physical man coverage. So, yeah, we got to bring the tone to them as well. You can't lay down. So, we just got to go out there, play our game. And Coach is saying we got to bully the bully. So.
Denny, I know bullying the bully is one of your favorite strategic tactics. How many Colts wide receivers can you start this week, Denny?
You know me so well, Jay. It's what I've been doing my whole life, bullying the bullies. I think you might be able to start Michael Pittman as well as Downs because you have a Detroit defense that profiles as the second most extreme pass funnel in the league, only behind the Ravens. And you have a Colts team that's probably going to be chasing points throughout this game. So I could see, 35, 40 dropbacks for Anthony Richardson. Now, you lose some of those dropbacks to rushing attempts for Richardson, which is good for his fantasy value. But I think, especially with Bipocalypse, Bimageddon, whatever you want to call it, I think Pittman might be in play here.
Yeah, I'm at wide receiver 35, so I have him as a wide receiver, 4 or low-end wide receiver 3. Yeah, look, he's got 2 games this year with 50 or more receiving yards, 2, right? But to your point, game script should be in his favor. He did get a 29% target share last week with Richardson under center. That's his highest since week 4. I prefer Josh Downs. I have him ranked higher. I have him at 28. He's got 2 games this year, only 2 games this year where he's had fewer than 12 fantasy points, right? 26% target share leads the Colts. And we saw last week still a connection, even though it was a better connection between him and comeback player of the year, Joe Flacco, there was still a connection between Downs and Anthony Richardson. He's actually scored in each of his last 2 games with A-Rich. So Downs inside my top 30 this week. Okay, last game for us, Sunday Night Football. Eagles 2.5-point favorites in Los Angeles against the Rams. The total is 49 flat. A wealth of superstars here. Denny, do you think Kyren Williams is still a top 10 play in this tough matchup against an improved Philly defense?
I don't. We talked about this on the Roto World Football Show on Thursday. The return of Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua to this lineup has made the Rams naturally more pass heavy. Kyren Williams is not seeing the insane volume he saw early in the season, and he needs that because he's not an efficient player.
He's not an efficient player, but also what's hurt him really recently is the lack of touchdowns, right? He hasn't scored in 4 straight, and that was after he had scored like in all the games up until that run. So the last 10 Rams touchdowns have all been passing scores as well. But you think about how well that secondary of the Eagles has played. So it feels like positive touchdown regression is coming for Kyren Williams. He's had only 3 games with fewer than 14 fantasy points all season, all in the last 3 weeks. I think he's due. I'm at running back 8. I say Kyren Williams gets into the end zone on Sunday night.
Okay, that'll do it for What's on Tap, presented by Bud Light. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy. This Sunday night, that game we talked about, 2 teams battling for playoff positioning when Jalen Hurts and the Eagles fly west for a clash with Matthew Stafford and the Rams. Coverage of the matchup begins at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock. We're hitting our last break. When we come back, last call. It's time to pick up Matthew with our best bets for the weekend. DraftKings Sportsbook is the #1 place to bet touchdowns. New customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Download the app and use promo code BERRY when you sign up.
Yes.
DraftKings Sportsbook.
Oh, the crowd is yours!
It's yours! Okay, last call. Pick up lines.
Oh,
The
yeah.
crown is yours. We look at the matchups with the higher spreads. The Washington Commanders, 10.5-point favorites against the Dallas Cowboys. That would not have been the line preseason, but that's where the Cowboys are at right now. Denny, what have you got? What is your favorite bet on the slate?
Yeah, try to pick me
Hear
up,
me
even though
out.
I'm here and Jay and I have been, enjoying time together. So
I
you
can
got
see
your work
that.
cut out for you.
I know. I gotta come with this pretty strong here. Nico Collins, I'm taking his alt receiving yards line plus 9, so over 90 receiving yards at plus 170. He had that long touchdown called back last week on a phantom ticky-tack call, offensive lineman downfield or whatever. He was targeted on 33% of his pass routes last week against the Cowboys. And the Titans, let's just say this. The Titans defense looks like it's okay, but it's really, truly not. The nerdy metrics say that this secondary stinks. I think Nico Collins has a big day.
Okay, I like that. Well, this is an appropriate day for pickup lines with all the touching that's been happening. No touching. Mike Evans, over 54.5 receiving yards is my best bet, Matthew. We gave out the ridiculous factoid the other day about the Giants secondary against deep passes. So passes over 20 yards in the air, teams complete 77% of them against the Giants. So I think Mike Evans, with no Chris Godwin taking targets away from him, he comes back and he gets at least 55 receiving yards.
I like both bets. I'm going to take both bets. I like you going plus money there, but I think it's plus 170 for a reason. Houston's so run heavy with Joe Mixon. I don't know that Tennessee's going to put up a fight here. I'm going to go home with Jay. I mean, to be honest with you, all the touching throughout the show has sort of got me going.
No touching.
It's reminded me of that one night in Buffalo, that one special night. So Mike Evans, his first game back, Baker Mayfield, he's going to want to make a statement. He's going to want to try to get Evans involved. And, yeah, throwing deep on the Giants seems to always work as well. So
Indeed.
I'm going to go home with Jay, Denny, but I appreciate the efforts.
I didn't have much of a chance, and honestly, Jay's bet is better than mine. 54 is crazy. That's crazy low.
It's ludicrous. It should be 16 yards high. Well, speaking of those New York Giants, Daniel Jones has just been released. That news has just come across. Giants have released a statement. Wish the best for Daniel Jones. He's free to sign with the new team as of Monday afternoon. Fantasy-wise, Matthew, though, no real impact.
No real impact until he does. It will be interesting to see if he does, in fact, sign. He'll have some offers. Like, he's better than a lot of the backups out there. Is he willing to take a backup role? Just want to sort of take the rest of the season off and then see what the offseason brings. He'll definitely have – he won't be unemployed, for sure. No update on Brock Purdy there. He's going to try to practice today real quickly, so we'll see again. We'll sort of track that story
Looks
as
like
well.
Brandon Allen is going to be the guy if Brock Purdy
Can't go. But so far they're saying that he's trending the right way. But again, the 49ers lie about injuries. So we'll wait to see what happens on Sunday morning with Fantasy Football Pregame. Denny Carter, you are a scholar and a gentleman. Thank you. For Jay, I am Matthew. It's closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. We'll see you Sunday morning. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotorWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.